Good evening, everyone. My name is Lonnie Freedman. I'm the Health Literacies Specialist at Mackenzie Health Vaughan Library, located in the Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital. Today, I will be doing a presentation on detecting fake health information. Feel free to place your questions in the chat and I will answer them at the end of the presentation anonymously. This session will be recorded and will appear on Vaughan Public Library's YouTube in the near future. Before we get started in earnest though, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. Vaughan Public Libraries respectfully acknowledges that our libraries were built upon the territory and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation per the Toronto Purchase Agreement or Treaty 13. We also recognize we are situated on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee who occupied this land before the arrival of European settlers. The city of Vaughan is currently home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge their contributions to the life and prosperity of this land. As representatives of the people of the city of Vaughan, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. So our presentation tonight will be talking about how to detect fake health information. And first, let's see why this is a big deal. So the World Health Organization calls the prevalence of misinformation during a disease outbreak as a, quote, infodemic, since misinformation can lead to poor health outcomes for individuals, and that poor health outcomes can compound among our communities. Twitter, Facebook, and social media as a whole are good forums to communicate with friends, but are not equipped for scrutinizing health information dissemination. And so 132 member states have signed off with the World Health Organization about this infodemic, this assessment. So for example, newspapers have scammed people since the turn of the century. Radios and TV have pushed dubious products for many years. Diet pills and tonics have been around for hundreds of years. Fake health information isn't new, but it's the spreading of this information, which was a fringe element about 20 years ago, and has now truly metastasized in society because of social media. So just starting with a working definition here, I got this from this published article. You can see below, Healthcare Professionals Act on Correcting Health Misinformation on Social Media. There is the PMID, that's PubMed ID. So you can look up this specific article that I cite by going to PubMed and entering in 3346-1008, and you can read when I'm reading. That will be a key feature of how to detect fake information by checking sources later on. Oh, let me just let someone in. Great. So let's start with the definition from this peer-reviewed published article. Health misinformation refers to, quote, health-related claim of fact that is currently false due to a lack of scientific information. Now, it's important to note that the current definition here is currently false. In other words, the scientific method engenders constant scrutinizing, reassessing, reevaluating of health concepts as a result of its peer-reviewed nature. Results need to be reproducible over a long time horizon. And disinformation, on the other hand, involves pushing a false claim for an alternative motive. So for example, for money or influence. And so science is very aware of its fallibility, and hence why what's here importantly is currently false, because this always is changing, but changing as a result of the scientific method. So now we have a good concept of sort of general health misinformation. How are people accessing this? And so via the internet. It turns out phones are the majority of the way people are accessing information on the internet now, which actually was quite surprising to me, but it makes a lot of sense. And so breaking this down, there's about 6.6 billion smartphones specifically in the world, which accounts to about 83% of the population. It's slightly above 90% when you include quote unquote dumb phones within the population of the world, which makes complete sense. Another thing too, and this is really confounding and really important as far as economics go throughout the world, 57% or approximately 2 billion exclusively access the internet via their phone. And this is going to increase their estimates around 75% in a couple years, which makes a lot of sense in developing nations, quote unquote, developing nations. Think of the portability of a smartphone. It's infinitely accessible. It's fairly relatively low cost, and it offers so many incentives. So for example, apps make all this information really easily digestible. Social media accelerates this information. So if you're bored or angry, you can get that easy dopamine hit by going on the internet and finding your niche. And something to think about, if a lot of us are using our phones, especially with the social media apps, to find information, and especially health information in our topic, that can skew the way we digest these things. And so, for example, as the Canadian communication theorist Marshall McLuhan famously said, the medium is the message. So in that, scientific journals, newspapers, radio, TV, and the internet inherently promote particular habits of engagement due to their technological or epistemological parameters. So let me give you some examples. Apps, for example, reward quick interactions. That's just the way they're built. Books, on the other hand, require extended periods of uninterrupted focus. TV, for example, allows viewers to passively absorb or ignore its content, whereas scientific journals require the reader to be scientifically literate, and in the best case scenario, mathematically knowledgeable. And so if you're getting a lot of your health information on your phone, social media, what have you, it becomes really hard to engage with what's called evidence-based practice. And this is how the scientific method works and how a lot of our health information is created. So when we're thinking about you're reading something online, and even it happens in books too, but this is truly much more of an internet phenomenon. You're reading an article online and you're thinking, how do I start scrutinizing this? So let's start with incentive structures. When you're reading something, think of both the article, the author, and the website that's hosting it. Here are some incentive structures to scrutinize within yourself, because you as the reader have to become a critical reader. That doesn't mean that you can't read something and agree with it or disagree with it and still take something away from it. But these are questions you should ask yourself. So the first one and the most obvious one is financial gain. It is by writing this article, is the author, the website, etc., making money from the claims? Are they selling particular products? So the ads within the website are promoting exactly what's in the article themselves. That's probably a biggest one. Big corporations as another example. Are they sponsored by a corporation? The second thing to think about is when you're reading an article, a social media post, what have you, it's often as a result of an anti-establishment angle. That doesn't mean necessarily it's not true, but this is something to be cognizant of. So is this particular narrative pushing an anti-government, anti-science, anti-doctor, an anti-particular group in general? Or is it generally just anti-authoritarian and hence why it has a certain angle? Once again, that doesn't mean it's incorrect, but this is something you have to take in mind with a lens while you're reading these things. Another example why you might be reading something and you have to understand the particular angle it's taking is because perhaps the authors, the social media poster, just wants social prestige. And so think of influencers. They're literally, their job is to create social prestige for themselves, get eyes on them, controversial or otherwise. It doesn't matter because, as I put here, the internet is algorithmically driven. In other words, capital flows towards who gets the most clicks, who gets the most eyes on them, whether it's negative or positive reception. Now, this, of course, occurred like in newspapers, on TV, movies, etc., as I previously said. But because the internet is at such an economy of scale, it has much different implications because it happens so much quicker and can spread so much faster. The last reason you might be reading something and it's taking a particular angle is because ultimately, whether it's the poster or the author, they're talking in cynical proof. So in other words, they're writing something to prove that this city or country or world is hopeless or useless. They're seeking information, otherwise that confirms their bias. So that's something, these four sort of incentive structures, when you're reading an article, a post of some sort, you keep these four things in mind and it will add a lot of clarity to whether or not what you're reading is reliable. Now, this too applies to scientific articles. I think it's important for us to scrutinize these too. We do want to encourage people to live in a scientific literate society. And since science has been around, it's been around sort of formally, quote unquote, for at least 500 years, but it's been thousands of years. You can trace it back to Plato, Aristotle, and other parts in the world, not just the Western world. So the scientific method is a long-standing tradition. But if we're talking specifically about the reliability within scientific articles, so the one I mentioned earlier from PubMed, things to think about is one, they're extremely niche, a lot of these articles. So as a result of them being very encountered with a lot of scientific jargon, for example, and they rely heavily on statistics to be significant. So firstly, you have to really scrutinize them, you have to have a good sense of mathematics, specifically statistics, to crunch the numbers they're giving. And secondly, and this is important, you'll see I have a little pyramid there on the right, hierarchy of evidence. And I'll go through it very quickly. There's a hierarchy of evidence within the scientific community when they are publishing articles. And so at the very top is a mixture of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is essentially all the statistics, the reliable statistics from many different studies that have similar parameters aggregated together. And the systematic review is reviewing those numbers and seeing if there's an actual causation, or as close as we can come to saying there's a causation, not just a correlation. So for example, you can have a meta-analysis on increasing your steps per day and weight loss, for example, or all-cause mortality, having a happier, more healthy life. So that would be a meta-analysis. As you go further down the pyramid, the quality of the evidence becomes lesser. So for example, there's randomized control trials, which are higher than cohort studies, which are higher than case control studies and case reports. Now you'll see at the bottom here, which it shows on the right side, it's quote unquote promising, and it says expert opinion / background information. So you might read an article, have a post from a doctor. And so this is the equivalent of the expert opinion. This is not a meta-analysis. This is not a randomized control trial. This is someone's expert opinion, which could still be valid, but this is something to keep in mind when you're reading anything online, especially social media, that at most you're getting an expert's opinion from social media. And so that's at the highest. At the lowest level, you can just be getting outright disinformation. And it's quite often hard to tell the difference. And we'll go through some examples a little later about when you're encountering what. So when you're looking at a website, there's some factors here you can look through. So in addition to the inception structures that I talked about earlier, there's a few other questions you can ask yourself. So the first one is who actually runs the website? So is it an organization? Is it a government website? So I put .gov, that's typically American, .ca, typically Canadian. Another thing you should ask for, which I talked about a little earlier, is how is the website being paid? How's it sustaining itself? Is it a charity? Again, is it a government? Is it using ads? Now, just because it has ads doesn't inherently mean that it's an unreliable source, but there could be those conflicts of interest we talked about earlier. Third, this is actually quite crucial that gets overlooked often, is the information created by experts? And so a lot of this has to do with your specific due diligence. So even if, for example, the author of a study says, Dr. Freedman, let's take for example, and this person says X, Y, and Z, you then should look, what type of doctor are they? Are they actually a doctor? Is what they're a doctor in the field that they're talking about? That's quite important. The fourth sign to look for, does the site want money or personal information from you? If it truly has valid, important information, it shouldn't have to then take money from you explicitly or take your personal information. In other words, it's one thing to do an email list. That's different from pop-ups coming asking you to save now immediately before the timer runs out. 5, and this is actually quite funny, you would be surprised how many websites I found that aren't up to date. And so almost all of the websites have a date timestamp of when they've published that article. If they don't have that, it's a huge red flag. If they do have that and the information is extremely old, but it's talking about something quote new, something to be aware of. And lastly, and this is a great tool, is how does it compare to other reliable health information? And so Vaughan Public Libraries, we've aggregated quite a few websites for you to juxtapose anything you find. If I'll show at the end of the presentation where to find that, but it's on our website. We have a few, for example, HealthLink BC, York Region Health has a really good one, and Medline Plus is another one that comes to mind. So we're going to go through an example. Here's one I found. So we're going to go through that checklist that I just went through just on this website. Here's one. It's called vaccineholocaust.org, which is certainly an interesting title to name your website. That's a red flag in itself, but let's take it at face value. It says, this article says, babies are dying after drinking breast milk from, quote, fully vaccinated moms. This is by Ethan Huff, and it was published on October the 5th. So again, who runs the website? So it's .org, so it's just an organization. It has donors. I looked into this. You can donate. It has lots of ads. In fact, you can see here, so who is paying for the website. But after the agree and close for cookies, it says survive the global reset 9-hour audiobook and to buy it now. So it clearly has ads that the specific website is promoting. Information created by experts. So I looked up Ethan Huff, and it's funny that there is a specific websites dedicated to looking at other websites to see if they are indeed true, so vetting them. And of course, lots of disinformation on this specific website. But as far as Ethan Huff, I could not find any qualifications. Doesn't say anything. It could be just a random person. We don't know. Even if this person is a doctor in this specific field, it's really hard to find that information. At least it's not evident on the website itself, let alone doing some more research. Does the site want money or personal information from you? Indeed, it does, with all the ads, but not specifically in that it has a pop-up saying, please buy this to save something, but it's inherent in the structure of the website with the type of ads that the articles are promoting of the ads. And lastly, how does it compare to other reliable health information? So I gave it a true honest test for due diligence. I looked at, to this person's credit, they gave their citations at the bottom. And so the three that came up for this particular article were allnewspipeline.com, naturalnews.com, and truth11.com. So I went to these websites, and these websites too had conflicting information, which was a shame. A lot of these websites, mostly truth11.com, had an enormous amount of ads. I mean, it was scattered everywhere and conflicting kind of dubious assertions, to say the least. And lastly, this is really troubling. Ethan Huff, in some of his articles, including this one, there were some circular citations. In other words, Ethan Huff was citing another one of his articles that he wrote, which in the scientific community is typically a no-no, with a very few exceptions. So this one didn't pass our reliable health information test. Now going to general social media, this is taken from the very first article, the definition we talked about from the PEDM article. This is also in that article. This is showing how health practitioners can look through social media and sort of a tree, so to speak, decision tree of what should you look for. So I won't break down this whole thing, but let me highlight a few important things. So there's this, again, we have to be sort of mini scientists, whatever we're reading, whatever part of the political spectrum you might be on, I think it's irrelevant. What we really want is clean, efficient, and reliable health information. I think most people can agree on that. And so part of the due diligence when you're reading something is, again, you can see here, internal acts of authentication includes checking the author, which we did previously, checking the topic and checking the cues. So what the cues might mean is the background information, checking the past posts, which I did earlier, and cross-matching, which I said earlier, you can do via HealthLink BC, Medline Plus, York Region Health is a really good one. Another thing to think about when you're reading stuff online is you're reflecting, again, a lot of critical theory, critical thinking, should I say. You're thinking of the incentive structures of what you're reading, why is it in a particular way, the format, etc. And to be respectful of not taking at space value, but going in a little deeper. And so Think of, for example, you have a family, or a friend or a family member who reads an article with dubious information. Then what happens is they digest it and reword it inevitably within their own mind, and then they'll post it on social media or tell you the Coles Note version in person. And so you can see that even when you're reading reliable health information, you can play a game of phone tag. By the time you hear it from your friend or family member, it can get diluted, let alone if they're reading something that has actual disinformation in it. So we're going to now do a couple more social media examples. These are from Twitter. So here's the first one. I'll read it out. Hand sanitizers is antibacterial. The coronavirus is a virus. A bacteria and a virus is not the same. Wash your hands. Sanitizer will do nothing for the coronavirus. Sincerely, a scientist that is tired of this shit. So a couple of things here that we should start thinking about. It had 241,000 likes, 81.8 thousand retweets. So the first thing to ask is, what is this person a scientist of? And it sounds like a banal question, but are they a physics scientist? Are they a biological scientist? Even within biology, there's many sort of subsections. So that's the first thing. So are they an actual authority of this? And even still, notice the timestamp is in March of the 1st. Now, we know that COVID-19 could have appeared as early as November of 2019. But as far as North America goes, it was not until in March that we started having lockdowns, mid-March or so. And so to me, it's interesting, to say the very least, that this person's already tired of all this debate when it's just starting as far as the worldwide epidemic. And then here is what's interesting about this one in particular, because this person is technically saying a truth, that the technicalities of a bacteria versus a virus do seem legitimate. So if you're reading this, hand sanitizer is antibacterial, and the coronavirus is a virus, which the bacteria and a virus are technically different things. So if you read this at face value, it does have some merit. But if we dig, once again, a little deeper, it has a bit of a flawed logic. So I found this review, again, PubMed, it's a published article. It's from the Journal of Egypt Public Health Association. There's an umpteenth amount of evidence about sanitizers, but I picked this one in particular because it has a great quote. So this is from, you can again go to PubMed, type in 351-33535 and read what I'm reading. This is on page 6. Let me read it out for you. Given the exploding nature of the pandemic, the World Health Machinery suggested regular use of hand sanitizers as one of the protection measures against the coronavirus. Hand sanitizers help fight against the virus by damaging the cell membrane and therefore damages the components of the virus, making it futile. Hand sanitizers have been highly effective to inactivate multiple viruses. Studies show that alcohol-based disinfectants were effective in deactivating SARS-CoV-2 and MERS-CoV. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers include components like ethanol, isopropyl alcohol, glycerin, and water in all available various forms. And so if we go back to that tweet before, that person was technically true, the difference between a virus and a bacteria. But the point of hand sanitizer wasn't the effective killing of it, but rather it was the movement of your hands in addition to the sanitizers that breaks apart the virus. And that there's the key difference. Now, here's another example. Brains behind new 5G data communication networks described below. New Bill Gates sponsored coronavirus vaccine with nanotech will run everything and control everyone who are still necessary, like bots to serve the elite. Get your vaccine now, ? And then gives an article, or rather a YouTube video. This is kind of bordering on the typically what would be seen as a conspiracy, because again, cell phones, I mean, this is already happening. If you think about our infrastructure, cell phones already know where you are at all times. Think of Google Maps, Apple Maps, what have you. Everything's being tracked, at least as far as consumer habits, and that's as far as it goes. But then we have evidence, for example, that apps can hear what you're saying. Think of on Amazon, for example. And so it is interesting. This particular example, they're specifically saying Bill Gates is doing it, which is, again, this is happening as far as communications going already. We all download certain apps and happily browse the web, giving our information. And I think explicitly, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, people are voluntarily telling people what they're doing and where they are. And oftentimes, funny enough, some criminals have been caught in the past after they do some type of crime and they post it on social media. So talk about Big Brother, but they're doing it to themselves. And so, and another thing that's unfortunate about this is that it's linking to, quote, real stories, but this is on YouTube. So it's to another video. And of course, again, what's the incentive structure of those videos? Getting clicks because it gets AdSense. And so there is the incentive. Here's another social media example. I'll read it out for you. If this isn't proof enough to convince the entire world that COVID was a planned operation, then we as a species are doomed and probably deserved it. The only virus we are dealing with here is the stupidity virus. Want to learn more? Then follow me at, and then a link. If you zoom in, it's hard to see from the picture. The manufacturing date for the COVID-19 vaccine AstraZeneca is from 2017. And then it has a little arrow pointing to it. So a couple of things about this picture, first and foremost. It could either be a misprint, or how could you possibly know by looking at any photo if it's not Photoshop, which is incredibly easy to do. Now, another kind of red flag, as far as I'm concerned, is when the author says people deserve to be doomed. So think about to those incentive structures. Oh, everyone is wrong and I'm the only one who's right. Please follow me to find out my program that you should buy. And here's another funny thing with this particular individual. He's known, actually, he's quite controversial in the use of therapies of numerous conditions. So he is an actual doctor, but this doctor has been controversial for therapies for autism and cancer. He has twice been reprimanded by North Carolina Board of Medical Examiners for unprofessional conduct. And lastly, even the US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, he's been reprimanded for illegal marketing of unapproved drugs. And so once again, think of the infrastructure to this particular claim of what does this person have to gain by pushing a particular narrative. Let's go off COVID for a second and think about general diet trends. Again, this has been around for so many years, decades upon decades. I'm sure those who recall the 80s, this was extremely popular. And so I pulled up a few examples here. This always happens. It's like cycles. Every 5 to 7 years, there's a new type of cleansing diet, oftentimes in juice form because it's so easily digestible. There's always, and I find these really interesting, there's always like a one food diet. And so potatoes are often hailed as, if you want to reset your body, you only eat potatoes, for example, for a week, and then you'll lose a ton of weight and you'll feel great. Often you lose a ton of weight is because you're in a calorie deficit. And so you could eat anything, but if you're eating significantly less calories than you typically eat, you could eat a hamburger one a day and lose weight. So it's irrelevant this particular food you're eating, but this is how you can market things because it's a healthy food. Another example is the baby food diet. This one's really fun. I think it's very amusing. So we all, presumably, you drink breast milk when you're young, and then it gets supplemented with baby food. And so baby food diet is, as you're an adult, you still eat baby food for 1 or 2 meals a day to supplement your other meals, which sounds really unappetizing. This is a tale as old as time. Diet pills of any sort are a general no-no in the scientific community. And it's not because we're anti-pills in this particular example, but because there's no scientific rigor that shows that they're effective. And that's the key thing. We're not just blindly saying because of potentially a political agenda or what have you. Science is open to any intervention that can help people to save their lives, but it has to, once again, go through the rigor of the scientific method, which is peer-to-peer review. It's reproducible studies, and it is something that can be reproduced over long stretches of time. So we're talking years, months, years, and decades. Another one that always gets repackaged is just natural diets. Cut out this, don't cut out that, add a lot of this. And it is interesting, in the last 10 years, for example, there's been a whole slew of different dietary interventions, and they all have their validity to them. But it's something to be critical within yourself, what makes sense for you in consultation, especially with all these diet trends, with your family doctor. And so lastly, the easiest red flag, just in general, is selling you a specific type of lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle that costs a type of money, a particular product. that you can't get anywhere else except this person or this website. I put here sort of jokingly, now in Slimming Red, there's always a new website or a new thing that can teach you how to lose some weight. So I'm going to stop sharing in this mode. Let me share in a different mode. I have our colleagues from William Osler Hospital has created a fun little game. I'm going to just go through a couple questions to highlight sort of the criticality to see if we can keep up with this. So let me now share my full screen. Give it a moment, please. There we go. And so this is a fun, I'll put this link in the chat so you can follow this at home later on. So what I would like is I'm going to read them out. I'm not going to tell the answers. Instead, I'm going to read out the question, and then as a group, if we can sort of come to a general consensus, what the right answer is. So here we go. We'll do 1 or 2 questions. So for 25 points, you have a bad headache and decide to go online to look for remedies when you come across a site where your favorite actor is advocating and selling a, quote, natural tonic that he claims will make headaches disappear. Decide to print out the page. So what do? Do you decide to print out the page with the tonic ingredients and talk to your doctor before trying it? Do you grab your credit card, you're buying that tonic, and he is your favorite actor and you would never steer you wrong? Or thirdly, visit the website and decide to click on links provided that talk about the tonic. You notice that not all the links work, but thankfully the link to the purchase the tonic does. So please put in the chat, do you think number 1 is the answer, number 2, or number 3? I won't say anyone's name, so don't feel embarrassed. So there's one person put 3. 3. Three is this one. 1 is this one. None. Fair enough. Yeah, none. Any others? Okay, so the majority put 3. So that's the one we'll click. Again, let's find out. Oh, it doesn't seem that was the right answer. Let's see. So the answer in this particular case, the closest one to being right is number 1. It says here, you're right. You should always talk to your medical professional before trying any new treatment or medicine. It's a great idea to print out information pertaining to new medicine so that you can discuss if there are any side effects or drug interactions. And here, this is a great red flag. You should be wary of sites that are pushing to sell you their products. The fact that most of the links are broken is a sign that the site has not been maintained and updated. Okay, let's try another one. So for 100 points, you are having lunch with a friend and they tell you about a fantastic article they read, quote, hair loss brushes for curing hair loss. You go to the website. Number 1, you go to the website and buy the hairbrush. Number 2, on the website, there are so many personal testimonies. It must be true since it's helped so many people and is 100% effective. Or number 3, you notice that the website only has personal testimonies and no scientific studies. You decide to go to a reputable health source such as Mayo Clinic or Medline Plus and do more research on the topic. If it's true, there will be documented studies on the topic. So what do people think? Number three, yep. Lots of 3s. One person made a good point saying getting a hold of a medical practitioner is not so easy. That's true. There's actually a term I just recently learned. If you don't have a family doctor, in the medical world, they call that an unattached person. In other words, you don't have someone where you can rely upon. And so that brings up a good systemic issue in general with finding reliable health information as far as someone to help. What I would suggest is coming to the library. Now, we as library practitioners, we're not going to tell you if a certain information, for example, if you come to the library and say, what's the best diet? That's not our place to tell you the answer. Instead, what we do is point you towards all the reliable health information on that particular topic, and then you can read and digest that information and start deciding and making an informed health decision. That's really what the library is here for. So a lot of people said 3. Let's click that. And indeed, we were right. So while there are real medical treatments for hair loss, this can't effectively be done via a special hairbrush. But more importantly, headlines that are vague or use questions instead of statements are also often a sign of fake news. During each search for medical information, it is important to recognize that profit drives social media platforms, and this makes fake medical news even more prone to manipulation. It is important to search credible health sources and not just social media. Okay, so let's do one more as a group. This has been useful for me. So you are talking with a friend and lamenting that you can't lose weight. Your friend suggests this product she saw online, weight loss gummies that are made with 100% natural ingredients. Wow. Some products even have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and there are many testimonials to its effectiveness. So do you, one, go online and immediately purchase several bottles? Number two, since the website has many personal testimonies, you check your social media feed to see who else is using the product. You cannot rely on the website testimonies alone. Or three, you search Medline Plus to familiarize yourself on the topic of using supplements to weight loss. This provides you with information you can discuss with your physician at your next appointment. What do people think? 1, 2, or 3? Lots of 3s. 3. Yes, indeed, that is the correct. I think you're seeing a pattern here of whatever you see online, even if they're someone that you know and trust, it's really critical to be cognizant of, even if someone you trust and has your best interest at hand, like a loved one or a friend, you nonetheless always want to do that due diligence, checking reliable health information. So let me show everyone now that I have the shared. So thanks again for looking at that. Let's go here. I'm going to show you on our website where you can find some reliable health resources. So there's 2 areas you can go. Let me see here. Okay, the first one, this is a bit convoluted, but stay with me. I'll make it fast. I want to show you the long way. The long way is, here's our website. You go to books and resources by subject, and health and wellness. And here you'll go to links I've made among some of our other staff. We've aggregated a bunch of reliable health information, so societies, association society, general health and wellness, etc. And specifically here, reliable consumer health information. So if you find out about, let's say, a new high blood pressure drug, or you find out about a new type of pill or type of shake that has particular vitamins in it, you can go to one of these 4 websites, HealthLink BC, Mayo Clinic, Medline Plus, York Region Health, and know that when you're reading this information, it is vetted, reliable health information that's not trying to sell you anything. In particular, York Region Health and HealthLink BC are Canadian, Mayo Clinic and Medline Plus are American, and especially Medline Plus. This is actually run by the National Library of Medicine, which also co-runs PubMed. As far as you can think of it as a scientific Google for all published websites, all published articles, should I say. But Medline Plus, importantly, has very digestible, plain language information for you. Now, the faster way of getting here is if you just go to our website, vaughanpl.info, and then /health. And so here we are, /health. There's lots of great tools for you. Okay. The last thing I just want to mention is that if something comes up in the future and you want to, whether it's a personal family member has a certain type of ailment, or you just want to know something like the best form of exercise, quote unquote, you have a health question, should I say, and you want help finding health information, I can do that for you. Every month I have a couple appointments for what's called Health OneonOne. It's just a free service where you and I in Zoom like this for 30 minutes privately. I've actually done a few sessions that go over an hour and a half, and where you and I can talk. Everything that we say together and discuss is completely anonymous. I do not share this with anyone. And this allows us to go in real time with your particular questions, and I can show you reliable health information. So if you find that interesting, or if something comes up in the future, feel free. It's on our Eventbrite. It happens every month. I have about usually 4 or so appointments that you can choose from. And if for some reason they don't work, you all got my email for this invite, so feel free to respond to that, and if you want more information on Health One-on-One. So with that being said, are there any questions of what I've covered today in general? Do you have any questions? I hope this was useful for everyone. It's this problem won't go away per se, but if you equip yourself with just doing some due diligence as you're digesting and looking at social media, looking at websites, even among PubMed articles, you use these tools and it can help you. So are there any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat now. I'll wait about a minute, and if not, we'll end this session. Okay, it looks like no one. Oh, timely topic, very helpful. We'll be forwarding the websites to view. Yes, I will. Thank you. That's a great proposition. So tonight, after I finish this, give me till about 8:30, and I will send everyone who I sent that initial link. I'll send you the Vaughan PL/health. So thank you. Well, thank you for saying I'm a good speaker. I try. I had some notes and a bit of off the cuff, so I hope that worked. Thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you, everyone. I guess there's no questions. Thanks again for the kind words. So again, I'm always available. You can just respond to the email I sent you. Even if in a couple months from now something comes up, this has happened before when I've done programs. Someone joins a program, a couple months later, they ask me a question. Feel free, my email is always open. So if you have any type of health question or inquiry, I'm very happy to help. So thanks again, everyone, for joining tonight. And we'll see you at the library soon.